Hey, second grade, Miss Daly here. We are going to move right into our math lesson. For today, we will be doing math lesson 14, and our I can statement is I can create arrays out of squares from rectangles. This is going to be a little different today because we are going to be given a rectangle. If we were in school right now, you would have your own rectangles made out of papers that you'd be able to cut out and move around. But unfortunately, since we're not at school, we have to work with what we have. So please follow along with me. Make sure that you are answering back to any pauses that I provide, and we can work on this together. All right? First, our instructions say separate each row of the rectangle. Which way do rows go? Good, side to side. So I'm going to separate my rows. This is a row, and this is a row. Let's go ahead and separate them. Do it just like this. Boom. Now I have rows separated. First, this rectangle has blank rows. How many rows do I have? 2. Good. 1 row, 2 rows, 2 rows. Each row has blank squares. Each row has blank squares. So this is a row and this is a row. How many squares are in each row? 4. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each row has 4 squares. Now here is our sentence frame. Blank rows of blank equals blank. First, how many rows do we have? Blank rows of blank. How many rows? Good, we have 2 rows of blank. How many squares are in each row? 4. 2 rows of 4 equals what? Now, this is where I noticed a lot of students got tripped up because they said, oh, let's just add the 2 numbers. Make sure, remember, anytime we see that equal sign, that means it's the total. It's all of the squares. So 2 rows of 4 equals blank. 2 rows of 4 equals how many squares? We can solve this by skip counting. Let's try it. 4 plus 4 equals 8. Good. Another way to solve it is by counting up all the squares, but when we get to 3rd grade, we're going to have huge arrays and it would take us a long time to add up all of those squares. So skip counting might be our best option. So we have 2 rows of 4 equals 8. This rectangle has blank squares. This rectangle has how many squares? 8. Good. That total doesn't change. Very nice. Let's reread this all again to make sure we have all the right components. 1, this rectangle has 2 rows. Looks pretty good to me. Give me a thumbs up if my sentences are correct. That one's good. 2 rows. Each row has 4 squares. 1, 2. Pretty good. 2 rows of 4 equals 8. Looks pretty good. And this rectangle has 8 squares. Looks pretty good. Let's go on to the next one. Now, this rectangle is the same as the first one, but we're going to separate it differently. All right. Instructions. Separate each column of the rectangle. Which way do columns go? Good. Up and down. Rows go side to side. Columns are up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and separate these just by dragging them over by their columns. There's a column, there's a column, and there's a column. Good. I separated them going up and down, so now I have columns. This rectangle has blank columns. How many columns do you see? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Each column has blank squares. Each column has blank squares. How many squares are in each column? Good, 2. First column has 2, second column has 2, third column has 2, fourth column has 2. Now we have our sentence frame. Blank columns of blank equals blank. Blank columns of blank. How many columns do we have? 4 columns of how many? I have 4 columns. How many in each column? Good, 2. Now remember the answer at the end of the equation after the equal sign is our total. All right, so 4 columns of 2 equals how many squares? Let's skip count. 2 plus 2 equals 4 plus 2 equals 8 plus 2 equals, no, plus equals 6. Good catch. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6. 6 plus 2 equals 8. If I make a mistake like that, try to knock on your screen. Say, Miss Daly, Miss Daly. Sometimes teachers make mistakes too. That's okay. That's okay. All right. 4 columns of 2 equals 8. This rectangle has how many squares? Did our total change? No. All right, let's try to redeem ourselves here. We're going to skip count again. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6. 6 plus 2 equals 8. Perfect. Let's do a silent celebration. Here we go. All right, now we have a ton of squares here. Our instructions say, construct a new array using all 16 squares. So we need to construct a new array that doesn't look like this. It's going to look different. Think of a way that we could construct an array. Remember, an array is going to look either like a square or a rectangle. No extra ones flying around. What's it going to look like? Let's see if the one in your head matches mine. I'm thinking that I could possibly make this into 4 rows of, or no. Let's try making it into 2 rows. Let's try this. So I'm going to take these and bring them up to here. Did I make a new array? Yeah. Did I use all 16 squares? Yeah. Do I have any others flying around? Nope, looks good. This array has blank rows of blank. How many rows do I have? Which way do rows go again? Good, side to side. How many rows do I have? 2. 1 row, 2 rows. I have 2 rows of what? How many squares are in each row? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 rows of how many? 8. Good. This array has blank columns of blank. Which way do columns go? Up and down. So this array has blank columns. How many columns do I have? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 columns. This array has 8 columns of what? How many squares are in each column? Remember, going up and down. How many squares in each column? Let's count. 1, 2. 2 squares in each column. Number 3 says write 2 repeated addition sentences to match your array. In the past, we've always had lines underneath the columns or to the side of the rows to symbolize where those numbers came from. In this case, we're using the same array, but our repeated addition sentence is just at the bottom. So no biggie. but we need to make 2 repeated addition sentences to match this array. Let's first start with rows. This row and this row. How many squares are in this first row? 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 in the first row. Now let's count our second row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 plus 8 equals what? Good, 16. Now we need a second repeated addition statement. Our first one was for rows. Now we need one for columns. How many squares are in each column? 2, good. So our repeated addition sentence is going to be a little bit longer for our columns. First column is how many? 2 plus 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 2. Good. To make sure we got all of our addeds in there, we know there are columns of 2. How many columns of 2? 8. So we should have 8 add-ins. Let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good. Now let's skip count. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6. 6 plus 2 equals 8. 8 plus 2 equals 10. 10 plus 2 equals 12. 12 plus 2 equals 14. 14 plus 2 equals 16. These repeated addition sentences should be different, but they should have the same total because we didn't take any squares away and we didn't add any squares. They should have the same exact total. All right. Very nice, second grade. Now your job is to go back to Google Classroom. Make sure you fill out that Google form, and I will see you in our next video. Bye-bye.